A $56 million dark glass monument on the Florida coastline is experiencing a catastrophic geological failure right now. Billionaires ride private, patented car elevators up 60 stories to park their supercars directly inside their living rooms at the Porsche Design Tower in Miami. They paid tens of millions for the most engineered, exclusive, and permanent address money could buy. Yet a terrifying physical process has been triggered deep beneath their imported marble floors. Join us and let's discover $13 billion mega projects sinking into the earth. Let's go. Topic number 13. Porsche Design Tower. The foundation of a 60-story monolithic tower is being silently devoured by the tide every 12 hours, while billionaires sleep completely unaware directly above the danger. 60 floors of dark, reflective glass rise above the barrier island of Sunny Isles Beach, housing individuals whose names appear on global wealth rankings rather than standard mailboxes. The signature feature of this massive coastal monolith is a patented technology named the Deservator, a heavily engineered glass-enclosed elevator system that hauls residents and their luxury vehicles vertically at 800 feet per minute directly into private sky garages. Buyers poured hundreds of millions of dollars into these exclusive units, purchasing the ultimate illusion of permanent stability engineered by the most expensive architectural minds on the planet. Beneath the glossy exterior and imported finishes sits a massive foundation resting entirely on a geological layer cake of porous limestone shot through with deep bands of loose quartz sand. The sheer dead weight of thousands of tons of concrete and steel is continuously pressing downward into a subterranean sponge that groundwater washes through twice every single day. The daily tidal movement systematically rearranges the microscopic grain structure of the earth supporting the structure, creating a slow-motion physical reaction the original marketing materials deliberately ignored. Something deeply unstable is occurring in the dark, completely out of sight, leaving a lingering question about what happens when money cannot stop the ground from giving way. Topic number 12. New York City. Over 1.7 trillion pounds of concentrated concrete and steel are actively crushing the most famous island on Earth straight down into the rising Atlantic. The massive skyline of Manhattan features more than 1 million individual buildings, including ultra-heavy, pencil-thin, super-tall skyscrapers designed exclusively for the global elite. Geologists recently calculated the cumulative mass of this dense urban infrastructure, discovering that the immense dead weight is causing the entire landmass to undergo severe structural subsidence. The underlying geology of the island consists of varying layers of dense bedrock, softer clays, and artificial landfill that compress unevenly under the staggering pressure of the skyline. This localized sinking significantly accelerates the destructive impact of global sea level rise, creating a fatal mathematical equation where the water climbs exactly as the city plunges. Extreme high tides and severe storm surges now routinely breach the protective seawalls of Lower Manhattan, flooding expensive subway networks and underground electrical grids with corrosive saltwater. The architects building the newest multi-billion-dollar monoliths are ignoring this terrifying geological data, continuing to pile unimaginable weight onto a shrinking island. This most expensive real estate in the world is physically accelerating its own drowning, creating an irreversible urban catastrophe that mirrors entirely different disasters further inland.
Only 1% of people know the dark truth behind what we are about to show you next. If you want to be part of the few who actually know what's happening in the world, subscribe and leave a like right now. Done? Look at this.
Topic number 11. Millennium Tower. Severe structural leaning has transformed a towering blue glass monolith in San Francisco into a dangerous liability that is actively crushing the soft mud beneath the financial district. Celebrities and tech moguls eagerly purchased multi-million-dollar condominiums inside the 58-story structure, attracted by the panoramic views of the bay and the unparalleled high-end amenities. The structural engineers made a fatal decision during the initial planning phase, opting to drive the foundation piles into dense sand instead of anchoring them directly into the underlying bedrock. The extreme concentration of weight placed upon the relatively shallow friction piles caused the entire skyscraper to press violently down into the yielding earth. The massive structure did not merely descend straight down, but began leaning significantly to one side as the uneven soil compression compromised the entire vertical axis of the building. Residents soon noticed marble balls rolling across their floors on their own, accompanied by terrifying popping sounds echoing through the walls as the internal stress distribution shifted dramatically. The leaning generated immense pressure on the exterior glass curtain wall and the interior plumbing systems, threatening to shatter windows and sever critical water lines high above the crowded city streets. Stopping the movement requires an extraordinarily invasive subterranean intervention, leaving the surrounding environment vulnerable to the terrifying consequences of cascading geological instability.
Topic number 10. Kiruna. An entire European city is being physically ripped from the earth and relocated building by building to escape a massive subterranean void threatening to swallow it whole. Located inside the Swedish Arctic Circle, this historic municipality was built directly alongside the largest underground iron ore extraction site on the planet. Over a century of relentless industrial drilling and aggressive dynamite blasting completely hollowed out the deep bedrock supporting the dense urban grid above. The state-owned mining corporation created a colossal, expanding cavity so vast that the structural integrity of the surrounding geology completely collapsed, triggering continuous localized earthquakes. Massive deformation zones are aggressively tearing through the frozen soil, opening terrifying fissures in the pavement and physically ripping brick foundations apart in the middle of the night. The government was forced to launch a multi-billion-dollar emergency evacuation megaproject, physically lifting heritage structures onto heavy transport vehicles and demolishing entire residential blocks before they plunge into the dark abyss. This iron operation is so incredibly lucrative that authorities deemed it far more logical to move thousands of residents rather than stop the destructive underground excavation. This desperate retreat from an artificial crater highlights how infinite financial ambition ultimately forces human civilization to surrender unconditionally to the compromised Earth.
Topic number 9. Oceanwide Plaza. A billion-dollar luxury vision looming over the entertainment district of Los Angeles is currently paralyzed in a state of extreme structural decay, functioning as the most expensive vertical ghost town in America. The original blueprint promised a sprawling high-rise ecosystem filled with five-star hotel suites, immense retail spaces, and ultra-exclusive residential units overlooking the busy downtown corridor. The Chinese development conglomerate driving the project suddenly ran out of capital mid-construction, leaving the exposed steel skeletons and incomplete concrete slabs completely abandoned to the elements. The massive unfinished foundation sits exposed to fluctuating urban groundwater and seismic vibrations, lacking the final structural load distribution that a completed skyscraper requires to maintain long-term stability. The empty husks of the towers quickly became a magnet for extreme urban explorers and highly organized graffiti crews who scaled the dangerous unfinished scaffolding to tag the highest elevations. The city government is now forced to spend millions of taxpayer dollars just to secure the perimeter, while the immense weight of the dormant structures continues to interact unpredictably with the complex geology of the fault zone. The exposed rebar and unsealed joints are deteriorating rapidly in the salt-tanged coastal air, compromising the core integrity of the steel long before a single occupant has ever stepped inside. The sheer scale of the financial ruin makes demolition almost impossible, quietly setting the stage for a devastating intersection of urban decay and unstable earth.
Topic number 8. Palacio de Bellas Artes.
An unimaginably heavy monument constructed from thousands of tons of imported Italian marble is physically crushing the earth and dragging itself meters below the street level of Mexico City. The cultural heart of the metropolis is dominated by this incredibly opulent architectural masterpiece, featuring ornate domes and intricate facades, commissioned to celebrate a national centennial. The site chosen for this magnificent display of wealth was situated directly above the ancient drained lakebed of Lake Texcoco, an expanse composed of highly compressible volcanic clay containing massive amounts of trapped water. The tremendous mass of the heavy white marble immediately began sinking into the soft sponge-like earth the moment the thick foundational slabs were poured and cured. The entire structure has plunged so deep into the ground since its inauguration that city planners must continuously build new sets of descending stairs just to allow visitors to reach the original ground floor entrance. The localized subsidence is so severe that the surrounding pavement frequently cracks and buckles as the earth is dragged downward by the incredible gravitational pull of the concentrated stone. The relentless extraction of drinking water from the aquifers deep below the city accelerates the drying and shrinking of the clay, multiplying the destructive forces tearing at the massive base. The extreme weight of the monument guarantees the earth will continue pulling, proving that architectural arrogance creates silent geological threats that echo across the globe.
Suvarnabhumi Airport, a colossal international transit hub handling millions of passengers annually, is actively being swallowed by a notorious geographical hazard traditionally known as the Cobra Swamp. The dense, waterlogged marshland outside Bangkok presented an absolute nightmare for geotechnical engineers tasked with turning a muddy biological basin into a pristine expanse of heavy commercial runways. The development required pumping millions of gallons of water out of the swamp and laying down a massive grid of concrete pilings to support the immense weight of jumbo jets and sprawling terminal buildings. The underlying soft clay refused to stabilize under the immense pressure, causing the newly paved taxiways to develop deep, dangerous fissures almost immediately after the airport officially opened to traffic. The uneven sinking of the ground creates treacherous conditions for heavy aircraft attempting to land and maneuver at high speeds, risking catastrophic gear collapses on the compromised tarmac. Maintenance crews are locked in a permanent, high-stakes patching operation, desperately injecting specialized polymers into the earth to replace the displaced mud and keep the runways from splitting wide open. The surrounding biological basin continuously attempts to reclaim its stolen territory, exerting massive hydraulic pressure on the foundation as the heavy concrete slowly surrenders to the wet, shifting earth below. The relentless conflict between massive infrastructure and deep subterranean marshland reveals a terrifying vulnerability hiding directly beneath some of the most famous structures on the planet.
The hidden subterranean skeleton of the most famous mausoleum in India is rapidly drying out and rotting away in the dark, threatening to bring thousands of tons of stone crashing down into the dust. The 17th century architects utilized a brilliant but highly specific engineering technique, supporting the colossal weight of the monument on a complex system of deep foundation wells packed with stone, rubble, and massive wooden ebony piles. The structural integrity of the entire complex relies completely on the continuous presence of moisture from the adjacent Yamuna River, which keeps the ancient wooden foundation piles submerged, swollen, and rock solid. Severe industrial diversion of water upstream and extreme modern droughts have caused the riverbed to dry up for extended periods, exposing the critical wooden supports to oxygen and rapid biological decay. The loss of consistent moisture causes the timber to shrink, crack, and rot away, fatally compromising the structural base that holds up the immense weight of the white marble pressing down from above.
The massive minarets flanking the main tomb have already begun to tilt measurably outward, as the uneven deterioration of the wood creates severe differential settlement across the sprawling stone platform. The gradual shifting generates microscopic fractures throughout the pristine marble facade, signaling that internal stress forces are actively tearing the ancient masonry apart. The slightest environmental shift threatens to trigger a cascading collapse, a terrifying reality that mirrors the reckless destruction unfolding in modern developments elsewhere. Topic number 5. Burj Al Babas. Deep within the forested mountains of Turkey, an endless grid of hundreds of identical Disney-style castles sits completely devoid of human life, steadily collapsing into the destabilized mud. The developers bulldozed vast tracts of natural woodland to construct over 700 luxury chateaux, targeting ultra-wealthy foreign investors seeking exclusive vacation estates with extravagant architectural details. The massive excavation and rapid concrete pouring permanently disrupted the delicate hydrology of the mountainous terrain, destroying the soil integrity across the entire valley floor in a reckless rush to build the sprawling neighborhood. The development corporation suddenly went bankrupt as the global economy shifted, abandoning the half-finished castles to face the brutal winter elements without any structural maintenance or environmental protections. The heavy, ornate concrete facades and sharp slate roofs add immense weight to foundations that were hurriedly poured on compromised, eroding earth, never properly secured against the threat of heavy landslides. Harsh mountain weather and unchecked water runoff are actively scouring the loose soil away from the bases of the abandoned mansions, causing the empty structures to tilt and fracture in the absolute silence. The identical rows of decaying palaces look like a surreal nightmare, slowly being swallowed by the aggressive forest, proving that extreme financial ambition cannot force the earth to hold its shape. A massive monument to greed waits for the mountain geology to drag the heavy concrete back down into the dirt, while a far more dangerous subsidence catastrophe accelerates on a much larger scale nearby.
Topic number 4. Pluit. The northern coastal edge of a massive Southeast Asian metropolis is executing the fastest terrestrial disappearing act on the planet, sinking into the ocean at a terrifying rate of 25 centimeters every single year. The millions of residents living in this dense urban grid rely entirely on unregulated deep underground wells for their daily freshwater, mechanically pumping millions of gallons directly out of the ancient aquifers. The massive extraction of water creates huge subterranean voids inside the earth, causing the layers of clay and sediment to collapse in on themselves under the immense weight of the concrete buildings and highways above. The ground has plummeted so far below sea level that a massive towering concrete seawall is now the only physical barrier preventing the violent ocean from instantly drowning entire neighborhoods. Dark, polluted seawater continuously breaches the cracked, aging defenses during high tides, forcing the local government to constantly raise the height of the wall, while the ground on the other side continues to plummet. The severe differential settlement shatters underground sewage pipes and fractures the structural pillars of high-rise apartment blocks, leaving critical infrastructure twisted and leaking into the sunken streets. The engineering reality has become so mathematically hopeless that the national government officially decided to abandon the area and build a new capital city hundreds of miles away in a remote jungle. Millions of people are trapped in a concrete basin aggressively pulling itself down into the dark water, dreading the inevitable moment the barrier shatters and the underlying earth gives way completely.
An 8th-century-old bell tower, constructed from thousands of tons of white marble, has spent its entire existence performing a terrifying, slow-motion fall that continuously threatens a catastrophic material failure. The original builders laid a dangerously shallow 3-meter foundation into a dense layer of unstable alluvial soil, composed primarily of soft clay, fine sand, and saturated river shells. The sheer, immense weight of the circular stone walls immediately began crushing the weak earth underneath, causing the entire massive structure to tilt dangerously toward the south before the third floor was even completed.
The relentless gravitational pull generated extreme stress on the load-bearing columns on the lower side, threatening to shatter the brittle marble and trigger an instantaneous collapse of the entire tower into dust. The masonry only survived because centuries-long pauses in construction allowed the crushed soil to slowly compress and harden just enough to temporarily hold the twisted, unnatural weight pressing down upon it. Modern engineers were forced to execute an incredibly dangerous intervention, drilling diagonally beneath the higher side of the foundation to carefully extract tiny amounts of soil and force the tower to settle backward. The high-stakes subterranean surgery successfully removed the immediate threat of a tipping point, but the ancient marble remains forever locked in an agonizing stance of extreme structural tension. The massive monument survives as a permanent hostage to the weak mud beneath it, suspended on the razor edge of a total destruction that could be triggered by the slightest vibration in the shifting earth.
Topic number 2. Mose Project. Submerged at the bottom of an Italian lagoon, a multi-billion-dollar network of massive yellow steel gates engineered to save a historic city is already rotting in the dark water. The underwater barriers are designed to rapidly inflate with compressed air and rise from the seabed during severe storms, physically blocking the violent Adriatic tide from flooding the priceless architecture of the sinking islands. The entire urban environment is built on thousands of ancient wooden petrified logs driven into mud, an unstable foundation that is continuously compressing under the sheer weight of the heavy stone palaces and churches. The localized sinking of the Earth is violently accelerating due to rising global sea levels, creating a fatal mathematical equation where the city is dropping exactly as the destructive water is climbing higher. The enormous underwater steel gates are already suffering from severe accelerated corrosion caused by biological marine growth and aggressive saltwater, compromising the hinges and hydraulic systems long before their intended lifespan. The massive financial cost of operating and maintaining the underwater machinery threatens to bankrupt the local authorities, turning the ultimate engineering solution into a completely unsustainable mechanical nightmare. The protective gates cannot stop the ground itself from continuing its slow, relentless plunge into the dark mud of the lagoon floor, trapping the priceless architecture between rising tides and a failing foundation. The brilliant yellow walls of steel are merely buying a few decades of borrowed time, setting the stage for an even more devastating localized disaster waiting to be exposed by cold, hard data. 35 ultra-luxury residential towers lining the exclusive Florida coastline were secretly measured from an altitude of 700 kilometers, revealing a terrifying physical reality that developers desperately ignored. A highly specialized team of university geophysicists utilized advanced satellite radar imagery to track the microscopic vertical movements of the massive concrete structures over a relentless 7-year period. The data confirmed that the most expensive, highly engineered buildings in the entire state, including the famous Porsche design tower, were aggressively sinking into the porous limestone and sand far beyond their accepted stabilization points. The extreme weight of the towers is causing severe invisible differential settlement, a lethal structural condition where different sections of a foundation sink at different speeds, silently tearing the internal framework apart from the inside. The most disturbing revelation from the satellite data was the absolute regulatory silence surrounding the continuing downward movement of these billion-dollar coastal megaprojects. Florida law does not currently mandate any ongoing post-occupancy foundation monitoring, meaning the wealthy individuals sleeping inside these slowly sinking monoliths are legally completely in the dark about the shifting earth beneath them. The ocean is rapidly rising to meet the sinking concrete, ensuring that salt water will eventually flood the subterranean foundations and corrode the critical steel rebar directly from within. The grand illusion of permanent, untouchable luxury was completely shattered by satellite measurements, proving that the sand always wins, and the ocean is not waiting for the regulatory requirements to catch up.
If you thought this was terrifying, you are not ready for what they found in the video on your screen. Click it right now. The truth is worse than you think.